Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your ever-loving host, Shorty, and since the store's open, I'm having to do this with a shutter down, so I'm going to be as quick as I can. While I review Sandman Universe, Lock and Key, Hell and Gone. Yes, that's a title. Yes, it is. But it's covering a lot of bases, and that's where I'm going to start my review. Because I've read every single Sandman story going, but I've not read all the Lock and Key ones, and I get the impression, based on some covers I've seen, things I've not read, that there is something that's happening in this story, which is part of a Lock and Key story I've not read, specifically something that was happening during one of the Great War. I think it was the Great War. And that made me thinking, well, could people who've not read Sandman or Lock and Key still get into it and pick it up? And because I had no problem picking the story up from what they told me in this one that happened in the Lock and Key I've not read, I figured the Sandman people people who haven't read Sandman will probably feel in the same way. But then that started me thinking, well, would people who have enjoyed Neil Gaiman's work see this as just a way of capitalizing on it, monetizing his stuff more and more, especially with the prequel that came out a few years ago, which didn't really have an impact at all in the lore. It clearly was just a story that was there to be told and money to be made rather than actually adding to it. And then I started thinking, well, people are probably going to make their own decision of that one regardless of quality. I know people who are fans of Tom King and Alan Moore's Watchmen who will not read Tom King's Watchmen story simply because it's monetizing, which doesn't deserve to be having more money made as a result of it, and also putting ostensibly left-wing story in the hand. Well, somebody who doesn't like the right wing, shall we say, in the hands of somebody who worked for Central Intelligence Agency could be seen as a morally weird choice to make. And I figured, yeah, people will just make their mind up regardless of that. If they want to read it, they're going to read it. And if they are not fans of that kind of crossover for the sake of it, they're not going to pick it up, even if I told them it's absolutely amazing. So that kind of goes by the by. If you're not sure what's going on, and if you just want to give something a try, this is probably more what you want to know. Is the artwork good? Is the story good? Does it make sense? Well, first off, we're going to talk about the story. Because it's Joe Hill on writing duties, with Neil Gaiman just down there as, I think, a research assistant or creative consultant or something like that. So it's full Joe Hill. And although in my mind he has certainly gotten better as a comic book writer as the years gone by, he did an absolutely brilliant bit of dark comedy detective story last year, which was absolutely amazing. This feels more classic Joe Hill, and I don't mean that in necessarily gushing with praise kind of way. I certainly enjoy his Lock and Key. I've read it from start to finish, all 6 volumes. It's brilliant, but it's certainly not something where I can pick paragraphs and rave about how well he puts together prose and how the cadence of it runs naturally from panel to panel. He's not that kind of writer. He's big concept, long prolonged story, really intricately weaved, and he does that really well. The same kind of thing comes from this. There's a lot of hints and stuff that's been happening within the regular Sandman stories, and I'll say within the Lock and Key stuff as well, which I expertly weave together in a way which is very, very satisfying. But in terms of the actual dialogue and character interaction, it's as good as I expected it to be, but it didn't wow me, didn't blow me away. I wasn't like, oh my god, I can't believe I get to read Joe Hill again. Yay, I am so lucky. I think he's actually got a career doing something slightly different than this, if I'm honest. But it's certainly everything that it needs to be. Artwork of it, though, is where he stands out, because Rodriguez is back on duty for this one, and he did all of the original Lock and Key, and I think he's done most of the side stories as well, and he's got an art style I genuinely love. But he gets to do stuff slightly differently in this one as well. For a start, when first meets Dream, Morpheus, the Shaper, whatever you want to call him, there is a distinct flick of artistic styles. Now, the style you get there, that's more his standard kind of stuff. But that is something very different, and that fits in with very much an obvious Sandman kind of style. But also, what the Sandman comic books did really, really well was be able to flick between styles and artists, and it all would make sense within the narrative because you are moving between characters and you're moving between worlds, really, and ideals and story types. So having that kind of ability to shunt style to style is very important. And he also does this. Sorry, get off there with the light on it. That is somebody being shot through from a cannon fired a whole bunch of sharpened keys. Very apt for Lock and Key, very apt for Sandman, because that is Cain murdering Abel again after he's just been dug out of a grave he's been put in with rats for several weeks. That is a perfect little bit of writing and illustrated brilliantly by the artwork. When you get to the end of it, though, there is, I suppose it's the bit where I'm like, wow, I wish I hadn't read all the Sandman books, because there's a little thing that happens at the end, which they try to bury it a little bit until the very final page, but if you know what's going on in the world, if you know what kind of story this is, it will not be a surprise to you. And at that point, I'd say, yeah, if you haven't read Sandman, if you haven't read Lock and Key, I think you can get loads from it. If you've read either of them, there'll be plenty there for you to come back to and plenty you can enjoy. And at least it looks glorious as you're reading it. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll be back tomorrow with another review. Take it easy. Stay safe. Bye.